Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Richard Milhous Nixon, perhaps the most infamous president of all time, and all for one reason: the Watergate scandal. From one of the most popular presidents down to the most disgraced. From winning one of the biggest landslides in history to resigning from the nation's highest office. But Nixon wasn't as bad as you think. Welcome to Explained, new videos every other Friday. Member of the House, United States Senator, and 36th Vice President. Undoubtedly one of the most qualified people for President of the United States. But let's follow his
oranges, the oranges of the oranges, how it started, the beginnings.
Richard Milhous Nixon was born on January 9th, 1913, in Yorba Linda, California, in a house that his father built. His family was extremely poor. In fact, he once said, "We were poor, but the glory of it was we didn't know it." His father's ranch failed, and they moved to Whittier. Not Whittier, Alaska, but rather Whittier, California. In the 8th grade, he became class president, a foreshadowing of his later political career, but in the 11th grade, he lost his bid to become class president. He later attended Duke University, studying to become a lawyer. Now begins his career in politics. It's 1945. World War II is over. In California's 12th Congressional District, basically the area in which one member of Congress will represent, Republicans are trying to unseat a Democratic incumbent. They look for someone who is a moderate and has a strong appeal to voters. They nominate Nixon, and Nixon wins that election. He was the first Republican ever to win that district. Incidentally, that same district is now represented by Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. He served one full term in the House and then got to the US Senate in a special election. A special election is basically an election that takes place to fill an empty slot, be it from resignation or from death. After that, he got selected to become Dwight D. Eisenhower's running mate for the 1952 presidential election. It was at this time that he became recognized nationally, but not necessarily for the right reasons. You see, at this point he was caught using an outside fund. Such use was not illegal, but rather, some people thought it was a conflict of interest. With the public largely against him, he decided to speak to the public himself, on television. He told the public he was a man of the people, and memorably, he referenced his dog, Checkers.
A man down in Texas heard Pat on the radio mention the fact that our two youngsters would like to have a dog. And believe it or not, the day before we left on this campaign trip, we got a message from the Union Station in Baltimore saying they had a package for us. We went down to get it. You know what it was? It was a little Cocker Spaniel dog in a crate that he'd sent all the way from Texas. Black and white, spotted. And our little girl, Tricia, the 6-year-old, named it Checkers.
This speech became known as the Checker speech, and it turned the public's opinion of him around. Eisenhower and Nixon won the 1952 and 1956 elections in landslides. Eisenhower was an extremely popular president at the time. Carried by the popularity of Eisenhower, Nixon ran for president in 1960, against John F. Kennedy. He lost in a close election. There were allegations of voter fraud against him, but Nixon decided not to contest the election, thinking it would lower the public opinion of America abroad. Nixon ran for president in 1968, and this time he won, also in an extremely close election. Now, Nixon's in the Oval Office. He decides to go for a victory lap. What did he do that's good? Well, he created the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA. The EPA advises the president and other top officials about what's good for the environment. Nixon also ended the highly unpopular military draft. A draft is basically an order in which the government forces you to join the army. He started the war on cancer, granting $1.6 billion, about $10 billion today, to various cancer research centers. He presided over the moon landings, though he cut funding to NASA since he was a believer in a small government. He enforced the desegregation or integration of schools, though some believe he didn't do enough. Nixon endorsed the Equal Rights Amendment, or ERA, which was a proposed constitutional amendment which would guarantee equal rights to all Americans. It passed in both houses of Congress, though it failed to be ratified by the required 38 out of 50 states. In addition, he did numerous other things to help protect the environment. He signed the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, and more. He supported the 26th Amendment, which lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. He attempted to make amends with the Native Americans by ending the policy of forced assimilation. He was the first president to recognize China's government as legitimate. He also signed Title IX, which banned gender discrimination in scholastic sports. Due to all this, as you can expect, he was an extremely popular president. He won the 1972 election with over 60% of the popular vote, and won every single state except for Massachusetts and the District of Columbia. Now came his downfall. The Watergate scandal, put simply, was basically the illegal spying on the Democrat Party headquarters. Some people broke in, and Nixon ordered it covered up. This wasn't the worst. Up to this point, he was still quite popular. It was at this point that the FBI discovered that Nixon was recording all of the conversations in the Oval Office. These tapes were released, and one recording showed that Nixon knew about the break-ins. Because of this, public support of Nixon cratered, and he resigned. His vice president, Gerald R. Ford, took over and pardoned Nixon. In his later life, Nixon tried to fix his public image, though it was largely unsuccessful. So, now you know, Nixon's probably not as bad as you think. Nixon died of a stroke on April 22, 1994, at the age of 81, in Yorba Linda, California. Incidentally, that's the same town in which he was born. He never subscribed to Explained. That was probably a major factor in why he was so unpopular. You can avoid the same fate by subscribing. Thank you for watching Explained. New videos every other Friday.